It was a dark December night in 1972. Eastern Airlines Flight 401 was headed to Miami. The plane was full of holiday travelers excited to be home. Captain Bob Loft was a seasoned pilot. His first officer, Albert Stockstill, and flight engineer Don Repo were also experienced airmen. Everything seemed routine. But high above the Florida Everglades, something went terribly wrong. As the plane prepared to land, a green light failed to illuminate. This light indicated that the landing gear was down and locked. The crew became fixated on this small problem. They were so focused on the light that they didn't notice something crucial. The autopilot had been accidentally disengaged. The plane, now without guidance, slowly descended. No one in the cockpit noticed the error. Outside, the vast Everglades awaited. The darkness hid the danger that lay ahead. Flight 401 was silently gliding towards disaster. The landing gear indicator light blinked stubbornly. It refused to show the green glow that signaled everything was okay. The crew, puzzled and concerned, decided to troubleshoot. They couldn't understand why the light wouldn't change. They went through checklists and procedures. The minutes ticked by. Captain Loft, a picture of calm, reassured the passengers. There was a minor technical issue, he announced. They were just circling while they sorted it out. He made it sound routine. Inside the cockpit, however, there was a growing sense of unease. The flight engineer, Don Repo, went down into the avionics bay below. He hoped to manually check the landing gear. The crew above continued their checks. They were so engrossed in the problem with the light that they didn't notice their altitude. Flight 401 was descending. It was drifting lower and lower, heading straight for the dark waters of the Everglades. Unseen and unheard, the massive Lockheed L-1011 Tristar jetliner plunged into the swamp. The impact was catastrophic. The plane, traveling at over 200 miles per hour, broke apart on impact. The fuselage shattered. The once luxurious cabin was now a mangled wreck. Of the 176 souls aboard Flight 401, 101 perished that night. The crash sent shockwaves across the nation. It was a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the unforgiving nature of aviation accidents. Rescue crews worked tirelessly in the treacherous swamp. They pulled survivors from the wreckage and searched for the missing, but the Everglades held on to its secrets tightly. The crash of Flight 401 was a tragedy of errors. A simple distraction had led to a series of fatal oversights. The investigation revealed the importance of cockpit communication and situational awareness. But the story of Flight 401 didn't end that night in the Everglades. It was only the beginning. The investigation into the crash was thorough. The wreckage, scattered across the swamp, was meticulously examined. Some parts, deemed salvageable, were cleaned and certified for reuse. These parts, silent witnesses to a terrible tragedy, found their way onto other Eastern Airlines aircraft. And that's when the whispers began. Flight attendants whispered to each other about seeing a familiar face on board. It was Captain Loft, they said, his ghostly visage appearing in the galley or peering from the passenger cabin. Mechanics, too, reported strange encounters. They claimed to have seen Don Repo, the flight engineer, tinkering with equipment in the avionics bay. At first, these stories were dismissed as grief, stress, or overactive imaginations. But as the sightings persisted, a chilling possibility began to take root. Could it be that some part of the crew of Flight 401 had returned? Were they bound to the salvaged wreckage, doomed to roam the skies in their afterlife? One of the most compelling accounts involved a senior flight attendant. She was working on a flight from New York to Miami when she saw him. Captain Loft, in full uniform, was seated in the first-class cabin. He seemed as real as any other passenger. The flight attendant, a seasoned professional, was shaken to her core. She had flown with Captain Loft many times before the crash. She knew his face, his mannerisms, everything about him. She approached him cautiously, but as she got closer, he vanished into thin air. Later, she found out that the plane she was on had several parts salvaged from Flight 401, including a first-class seat. Word of these sightings spread quickly throughout Eastern Airlines. Pilots, flight attendants, and ground crew alike exchanged stories in hushed tones. The airline, however, tried to downplay the rumors. They feared public panic and damage to their reputation. But the stories persisted, fueled by each new encounter. The ghostly apparitions weren't just silent observers. In some instances, they seemed to be trying to communicate. One story involved a flight engineer working on a Tristar in Miami. As he was troubleshooting a complex electrical problem, he felt a presence beside him. Turning, he saw Don Repo, the flight engineer from Flight 401. Repo pointed at a specific panel of instruments, then vanished as quickly as he had appeared. The engineer, though shaken, decided to follow Repo's ghostly guidance. He rechecked the panel and found a critical wiring error that had been overlooked. The error, if left uncorrected, could have had catastrophic consequences. This wasn't the only time that the spirits of Flight 401 were credited with averting disaster. There were numerous accounts of warnings given, parts mysteriously repaired, and even ghostly interventions in the cockpit. It seemed that the crew of Flight 401, even in death, were still dedicated to the safety of those who took to the skies. As the years passed, the stories continued. Passengers reported seeing Captain Loft in the aisle, his uniform immaculate, a sad smile on his face. Mechanics claimed that tools would move on their own, guided by unseen hands. The sightings weren't limited to Eastern Airlines. Other airlines using salvaged parts from Flight 401 also reported strange occurrences. Theories abounded. Some believed that the spirits were trapped, unable to move on from the traumatic events of that night. Others speculated that they were protecting others from suffering the same fate. Paranormal investigators flocked to the crash site and to airports where the salvaged parts had been used. They conducted seances, recorded EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, and searched for any evidence to support the claims. The airline, facing mounting pressure, finally removed the remaining salvaged parts from service. Whether this stopped the sightings is debatable. Some say the spirits of Flight 401 are still seen today, watching over the skies and reminding us of the delicate balance between life and death. Section 8. More than just ghosts. The story of Flight 401 is more than just a ghost story. It's a tale of human error, the capriciousness of fate, and the enduring power of hope. The crash served as a grim reminder of the importance of aviation safety. It led to improvements in cockpit design, pilot training, and aircraft maintenance procedures. The ghostly sightings, whether real or imagined, provided a sense of solace to some. They offered a glimmer of hope that even in death, there might be a way to protect and guide those left behind. The story resonated with people because it tapped into something primal: our fear of the unknown, our fascination with the afterlife, and our need to find meaning in tragedy. Section 9. The power of belief. Whether one believes in ghosts or not is irrelevant. The story of Flight 401 endures because it speaks to the power of belief. It highlights our innate need to find explanations for the unexplainable, to make sense of the chaos of life and death. The human mind is wired to seek patterns and connections. When we are faced with something that defies logic, we often turn to the supernatural for answers. The sightings on Flight 401, whether real or imagined, provided a framework for understanding the unexplainable. They offered a sense of closure, a way to cope with the senseless loss of life. The story, passed down through generations of aviation enthusiasts and paranormal investigators, continues to fascinate and frighten in equal measure. Section 10. A legacy of mystery. The tale of Eastern Airlines Flight 401 has become a part of aviation lore. It's a cautionary tale about the importance of vigilance and the unforgiving nature of mistakes at 30,000 feet. But it's also a story about hope, the enduring bonds of camaraderie, and the possibility that death is not the end. The crash site, now a watery grave, is a place of pilgrimage for some, a somber reminder of the fragility of life. The salvaged parts, though long since retired, are said to hold a residual energy, a whisper of the souls lost that night. The story of Flight 401 serves as a chilling reminder that some mysteries are never meant to be solved. It's a tale that continues to captivate and intrigue, blurring the lines between fact and fiction, reality, and the spectral realm. Section 11. Conclusion. Flight 401's enduring grip. The story of Eastern Airlines Flight 401 is a tapestry woven from tragedy, mystery, and the enduring power of the human spirit. It's a story that continues to capture our imaginations, sparking debate and fueling our fascination with the unknown. Whether you believe in ghosts or dismiss it as folklore, there's no denying the impact this event has had on aviation history and popular culture. The tale serves as a reminder that some events are so profound, so inexplicable, that they transcend the boundaries of our understanding. Flight 401, forever bound to the Florida Everglades, continues to haunt our collective consciousness, a chilling whisper in the night sky.